World War III will begin in the Middle East. And you know when the nuclear war happens? When Israel gets struck by the next superpower. And more than likely it'll be China and Russia. More than likely. Accompanied by Iran. But the main players are China, backed up by Russia. Because the brain behind China is Russia. Israel will be struck, and that will be nuclear warhead, the beginning of it. Everybody will press the button.
All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect. Time is running out. Trump issues dire warning to Iran. The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. This is the book of Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3. And it reads, it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. All right, so the end time prophecies no longer tarry. Okay, Isaiah 13:4. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua of hosts, mustereth the host of the battle. All right, so the Lord is assembling the nation's armies for Armageddon, nuclear war. All right, we are at the end. Verse 5. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And that whole land is Babylon, America. Okay, and the Lord is also going to take out the so-called Holy Land, where the tiny tops dwell. Right? Verse 6. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty.
Well, Sandra, President Trump is now giving a dire warning to Iranian leadership, writing on Truth Social this morning that a massive armada is heading towards Iran and is ready to, quote, fulfill its mission with speed and violence if necessary. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is tracking the latest for us on this. And Jennifer, it sounds like Iranian leaders are now responding with their own warning. What can you tell us?
That's right, Bill. In fact, the rhetoric is getting increasingly heated from the leaders in Iran. We have a statement from one of those leaders in which he said that any U.S. strike would be met with an immediate response, unprecedented, he described. We also heard from Iran's foreign minister that the armed forces in Iran have their fingers on the trigger, and the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei himself said that any illusion that any U.S. strikes would be limited is an illusion at that. The president, however, is deploying a clear carrot and stick strategy toward Iran. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group is now in CENTCOM control with its 3 guided missile destroyers and dozens of combat aircraft, including stealth F-35 fighter jets and F-A-18 fighter jets, and literally hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles capable of reaching Iranian targets. President Trump also offering an olive branch.
There's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
The protests may have ebbed, but they will spark up again in the future because this regime, unless they are willing to change and or leave, have no way of addressing the legitimate and consistent complaints of the people of Iran who deserve better.
The U.S. Air Force is running regional military exercises this week to signal readiness. Officials see a real chance President Trump acts, but an equal chance Iran blinks.
He's setting the theater in a way that gives him lots of options in the near term and probably even for a little bit of a longer runway looking out into the future. So if tomorrow or a week from now or a month from now there were a strike on Iran by the United States or in concert with others, I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
I think if you are the Ayatollah and you look at the military buildup in the region, he has to wonder whether he will suffer the same fate as Maduro or something worse if he doesn't come to the negotiating table.
Yeah, he said the military buildup in the region, right? Zephaniah 3 and verse 8. And it reads, Zephaniah 3 and 8, therefore wait ye upon me, saith the Lord, Yahweh Shai, unto the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations. All right, they're being assembled in the Middle East, so-called, right? That's where everything's being concentrated at. Okay, in the valley of Yahweh Shaphat. My determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms. See, that I may assemble the kingdoms to pour out upon them my indignation, even all my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. So this is where the Lord is going to judge the nations at. Okay, and we're in the beginning stages of it now.
Iran's ambassador to the UN responded. Last time the U.S. blundered into wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it squandered over $7 trillion and lost more than 7,000 American lives. Iran stands ready for dialogue based on mutual respect and interest, but if pushed, it will defend itself and respond like never before. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, Bill said publicly it would not let anyone use its bases to attack Iran. Bill?
Yeah, at this point, Iran has to know the president is not bluffing. Jennifer Griffin, live here in Washington. Jen, thank you.
Iran says negotiations cannot take place under threat after U.S. President Donald Trump warned Tehran to make a deal or face a military attack. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi posted on X that Iran's armed forces have their finger on the trigger to respond immediately and powerfully to any aggression. He added Iran has always welcomed a mutually beneficial and fair nuclear deal. The U.S. has laid out several demands. Tehran must reduce its ballistic missile capabilities, especially missiles that can reach Israel. It needs to halt its nuclear enrichment program. President Trump wants Tehran to end its support for regional armed groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. Well, Ali Hashim joins us now live from Tehran. Ali, so we earlier heard from Iran's foreign minister saying he'd had no contact with people like Steve Witkoff from the U.S. administration. Any sign now of any move towards talks now that we've had this latest ultimatum from Donald Trump?
Well, over the past hours, there have been a lot of messages conveyed between Iran and the United States through mediators, mainly regional mediators, and there's a lot of effort in this aspect. However, the issue is that the gap is still very big. The American demands, President Trump's demands, aren't any close to what Iran is ready to give, and this was clear, especially when it comes to the zero enrichment issue and the ballistic missiles, limiting the number and the range of ballistic missiles. So here is the main problem now. And there's even a bigger problem that the United States have been building up its military presence in the region for the past week, and the threats are very high. There is an attempt from the Iranians to say clearly that they are ready to talk, but to talk with dignity. And they are ready also to fight. And this is what we heard from several Iranian officials, including the head of the diplomacy, Abbas Araghchi. Also, we just heard this from the Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammad Baqir Qalibaf, who said that Iran is ready to talk. But in case the war is imposed on Iran, then Iran is going to fight. And no one can control the end of this battle.
And Ali, we heard from a warning from Ali Shamkhani about the Iranian response going well beyond the US. Just how wide a range of targets do we know are the Iranians looking at?
Well, we have to take into consideration that Iran already has an arsenal of ballistic missiles that can reach the sea. So the issue is that for now, the Iranians are dealing with a situation, whereas if they are under threat, then, as Shamkhani said and others said, the possibility of widening this confrontation is very big. In the past, we used to mention Iran's influence in Lebanon, in Syria in the past, in Iraq, in Yemen. Now, regardless of the curbing of the Iranian influence in the region, it still has this influence. It still has the influence in Lebanon. It still has the influence in Yemen and in Iraq. And we heard from these factions allied to Iran that they are ready to be part of this war. This is on one side. On the other side, Iran's ballistic missiles can reach to Israel. And to Iran, Israel is part of this whole battle. So the moment a war is going to happen, then no one knows the ceiling of such a war and the ceiling of such a confrontation.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much. Ali Hashim from Tehran.
Don't miss it. Yeah, there you go. So it's going down, man. And like we heard at the beginning, it's gonna start by the small hats getting hit. All right. And I want to get into Ezekiel 38 real quick. Okay, because this prophecy is getting ready to come to pass. So let's go to the book of Ezekiel chapter 38. It says prophecy about Gog and future invasion of Israel. You see? And like we heard in the beginning, how is nuclear war going to start?
World War III will begin in the Middle East. And you know when the nuclear war happens? When Israel gets struck by the next superpower.
Boom. Prophecy. Okay, Ezekiel 38:1. And the word of the Lord, Yahweh Shai, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord power, Yahweh Shai, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. All right, so now in this time, the Russians occupy this region, this land. All right, this is prophecy against Russia. All right, verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thy armies, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. All right, so Russia has now been made to a powerful force in which the Lord is going to use to take down Babylon the Great, America, and also the land of the small hats. Okay, as we're going to read here. You see, verse 5, it says Persia, all right, which would be Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya. All right, you have, you pretty much have most of the continent of Africa that's siding with Russia. Okay, it says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer. All right, you have parts of Europe that's going to turn on Babylon as well. Okay, and those small hats. It says, in all of his bands, the house of Togarmah, Togarmah of the north quarters. All right, going into Turkey, and all of his bands, and many people with thee. Verse 7. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. All right, so Russia is going to be a guard to all these nations that have assembled themselves unto them, right? Just making a point, as I brought this out before. Okay, let me pull it up. Right, check this out.
Africa just shocked the world, and it has massive implications for the United States and for Europe. Many of our Western leaders are freaking out right now. I kind of actually enjoy watching them. Victoria Nuland, who of course helped create the war in Ukraine, has gone from DEFCON 5 down to DEFCON 1 over Africa in the matter of weeks. It's an emergency, and she should be concerned because this stuff is about to hit the fan. The dominoes are starting to fall. And we'll get into the important details here in a second. But first, take a look at this map just published on Friday. These are all of the African nations that have now signed military agreements with Russia. And even a few of those in white are getting ready to partner with Russia as well. Damn. That's a lot of red. Now, we'll come back to that map in a moment. But
See, so that's the point there. So going back to what we read here, okay, it said that Ezekiel 38:7, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee. All thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So Russia is going to protect Iran and these African nations that have joined themselves unto him or unto them. Okay, which is going to make them even more of a powerful force. Okay, and these nations are assembling themselves against the Western hegemony. Okay, for nuclear war. Verse 8. After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword. All right, speaking about Israel, the land of Israel, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but is brought forth out of the nations, and they should dwell safely, all of them. Right, the point. Okay, going down to verse 9, it says, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land. See, because that land is the tiny top land is going to get invaded, is the point. Okay, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. See that, as we just read early on in the verses here, that these nations that have assembled and joined themselves unto Gog and Magog, all right, which would be the Russians now. You see, it says verse 10, thus saith the Lord power, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. All right, because pretty much, okay, America is going to get hit, okay, with nuclear missiles. All right, and also the land of the small hats. All right, verse 11. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of the unwalled villages. All right, speaking about America. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. All right, because America is pretty much wide open, okay, to be taken. All right, there's no gates, no walls. That's why I went under the Biden administration. All right, you had all these different so-called migrants, refugees, okay, spies, war criminals, all of that invade the land. All right, you got sleeper cells in America, all of that. All right, but pretty much this place is going to get hit, okay, with nuclear destruction. Verse 12, take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, that dwell in the midst of the land. All right, because these people in Babylon, America, are unprepared for these things to happen, man. All right, most of these people are in their security. All right, they're not privy to what's happening in these global affairs. All right, so when it happens, it's going to take people off guard. You know, it's going to catch people off guard. Verse 13, it says, Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Verse 14, therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog, thus saith the Lord power, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, in that day when my people of Israel dwelleth safely, shall thou not know it? Verse 15, it says, and thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army, right? Because the Lord is going to send nuclear destruction. He's going to send those missiles, man. Okay? Scriptures talk about the North country, all right, which is tied back to Russia. Okay? They're going to send those forces. They're going to send those troops. And the end game is going to be those missiles, man. You know? Verse 16, and thou shalt come up against my people of Israel, as a cloud to cover the land, and it should be in the latter days, and I will bring thee against my land. See, in the latter days, the Lord said he's going to bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me when I should be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. Right? Verse 17, thus saith the Lord power, Yahweh Shemel Shai, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants, the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them? And it shall come to pass at the same time when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, saith the Lord power, Yahweh Shemel Shai, that my fury shall come up in my face. Verse 19, for in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there should be a great shaking in the land of Israel, man. And it's getting ready to go down. Okay? So the fishes of the sea and the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the field and all the creeping things that creep upon the earth and all the men that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence, and the mountains shall be thrown down. See that? Mountains represent major governments, all right? And these governments, these armies are going to be thrown down. And steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. So it's getting ready to go down here, man. That's what's going to set this thing off. As it says in the scriptures, the least of the flock shall draw them out. Okay, so this is where we at, man. All right, every day is one step closer. You see that? Shalom.